cleverly. So today's topic is about inheritance. Now, what is inheritance? Is that it's a key feature whenever we start object-oriented programming, we're supposed to know the four pillars or whatsoever, the pillars of object-oriented programming. Inheritance comes into play, and what is inheritance is one of the key features of object-oriented programming in C++. It allows us to create new class, derived class from an existing class, base class. So this means that if you have one class already created like animal, and if I want to create another class that wants to have some links according to my base class, which is my derived class, like for instance, if I have animal, which is my subtrait, and I want to create some modifications to it, so I could create a dog class or a cat class that will belong to the animal, but it will have some its own features, including the ones that are in the base class. I hope that made sense, and it will make more sense when I go into the dev C++ environment. So the derived class inherits the features from the base class and can have additional features of its own. So we're going to add more features like I've just told. And also, what is the basic thing about it? It's the use of reusability and the maintainability of the code. So the syntax for this is class, and then you have a derived class, and then you will have a colon in the center, and then you have an access specifier, and then the base. So that was the syntax. So now let's hop on to what types of inheritances are there. So C++ supports 6 types of inheritance as follows. The first inheritance is single inheritance, and that means you just have created one object which is based on one base class. So if I have a base class which is an animal and I created one object, like for instance a dog, then it's just one level, single level inheritance. Multi-level inheritance will deal with one base class, and it will have one child class, and under that we'll have another child class. So we'll have something like that. So multiple inheritance is also when you have two base classes and you have one single child class which associates from the two base classes. And then there's hybrid inheritance, which is known as for the way how a base class can work for two child classes, but the child classes, one child class is separate from the other, but they have the same possessions of what base class have, but they're not related to each other. But then there's another child class which is on the third level, on the bottom pit, where it inherits between both of the sub-child classes. So that becomes confusing, but when you look at graphs, it gets really clearly. Okay, so after that, there's multipath inheritance, also known as hierarchical inheritance, where you have one base class, and this is the most common inheritance what we could deal in C++, which you have one class, and you want to inherit it publicly or privately or whatever you want it inherited, and you have a class. You have a child class 1, you have a child class 2, and you have till child class n. So you could create so many that will link to what the base class is. Okay, so those were the types of inheritances, and now let's go and jump into our code. So I actually wrote the code beforehand making this video, so what I recommend you is to type along, or you could also copy and paste it from my the link which is going to be in the description, but I don't recommend that. The more typing you do and the more you write code, the better you're going to get. So first we're going to get this explanation out so that you could understand what I actually did. Over here you could see my boilerplate code, which has the hash include IOStream using namespace standard, which is common. Over here you could see I have a base class. So this is how a base class is written. So base class is like my parent class. So a class shape, and it has some protected members. So this is you might be seeing this for the very first time. So a protected is another access specifier. So for instance, we used to have one was public, and public, we know that we were allowed to use all of its attributes or whatever the things were. Then there was one that was private, and that was kept for like secret and information that was only allowed to be accessed through one of the base classes, and no like inheritance could be adopted to it. And then after that, now we have this protected. These are all starting with P, which is easy way to remember them. So protected is actually done for inheritance, and that's why it's created. So I use this protected instead of private, which I usually use private, but I'm gonna use protected in this case, and I'm gonna create two attributes. One one is the width and one is the height. Because it's a shape, I'm giving some kind of real world example so you could understand it more clearly. In the public section, I have two data member functions. One is set width, which has an input parameter of temporary width, and it will assign it with the width that is in the protected section. Similarly, in the height, set height, I will have a height, and I will be giving a temporary, and it's going to be assigning to the height which is in the protected section. After that, when I go out of this, you'll see there's a derived class. And now this is the syntax how you could inherit things. So basically how I could read this piece of code, this code over here, I'm going to read it through class rectangle. So I created a rectangle class, and this colon means that I'm inheriting something. So I'm inheriting it publicly. Means I'm inheriting it access specified, which is publicly the shape. So you could see my shape over here, and the shape, all of its protected member and all of its public section. So everything will be just pasted right in here. So I don't have to write any single thing. So that's how reusability and maintainability could go. So maintainability means that programmers ease, even if you change something in the base class, mean the real class, you don't have to do anything because it's just going to optimize it and it's just going to do it for you. So it's like automatic, and it's a really good tool when it comes to writing 500 or 1000 lines of code. So now after that, I have this public section, and I created an extra member function. So this member function is a get area function, which has no input parameter, and what it does, it has a return type of int, and it will return the width multiplied by height. So it's basically a rectangle, so it's gonna do its formula, and after that you're gonna see the height. So when I go in the main class, you could see over here I created a rectangle, a rect from the rectangle class, which is the derived class, and then I did was set height and set width. Now you might be wondering, how am I able to access this? But the compiler knows that I've inherited it publicly, so all of this will be copied here, and now I could access all of the data members without even having to write it double or triple times. So it saves a lot of time and effort. So if I write something like rectangle, now you could see over here the compiler knows that I've inherited it publicly, so it could give me the value. So I could say set height over here. Now over here I'll put some kind of value, so I'll say height is 10. So I'm putting a semicolon at the end. Now I put a rectangle dot set width. So I could put a width as like 7. So I'm putting 7 as the width. Now what happened is that get area. So get area is the one that was defined here. So this is also going to work. It's going to multiply these both. So basically 10 asterisk 7, which is equaling to 70, will be the answer. And then what happens here is just I give a console output and I say rec.getArea. So it would give me 70 as the answer. So I would save this code, I would execute, I will compile and run this, and hopefully we'll have 70 as our area. So you could hear over here, you could see over here, area of the shape is 70. So that was it with inheritance. I know this was a very simple and very straightforward video. I will be doing more videos in the future where I'm going to go more depth, and I'm going to take the types of inheritance, which were like single level, multi-level, and hierarchical instance inheritances, and so on. And we're going to do example problems for each and every one of them. So that was it with this video, and I will be seeing you guys in the very next video. So peace out.